Hi everybody, it's been a while since we spoke. This is Victoria from When the Ancients Speak, and today we have a couple of interesting things that we wanted to talk to you about because I'm getting asked questions, and I think the best way for me to respond is to just give you the information and have the spirits answer some of the questions too. So let me welcome Mike, and for my family, whoever's going to be joining us today.
Hi everybody, this is Mike, and I seem to get the feeling that some of these other beings want to finally talk. It's been a little while since we've actually openly done any kind of channeling on our MP3, but the crazy stuff continues to happen. And what was really interesting, my wife was telling me this morning, she says, and actually her and I almost got in an argument over it. Every once in a while we get an email from people claiming to be all kinds of things. I try to be open-minded about it. I know Victoria does. But we also get offers sometimes. Did you want to talk about that a little bit? Kind of lead into some of the other things? Well, we every now and then somebody emails us and they tell us stuff, and we've made it very much clear to everybody that we're not in this for the money. If we were, we certainly would have had a better plan than we have right now. In fact, we do other things to earn an income. We work online. We ghostwrite material. We do different types of teaching. Victoria is a very well-known personality other than When the Ancients Speak. She has a large following of people. We publish literally an international magazine, and it is a worldwide magazine in a science niche. I don't want to get too much into it. We've talked about before about growing food and those kind of things, but we just thought we wanted you guys to know that whatever people offer us, we can't change what they're trying to do to change us from telling you these things. Like, would you like to tell the people, you don't have to tell them who said it or what said it, but exactly what you were offered to shut up today?
It was just a notification underneath my profile picture on Facebook of a person offering me money to be a part of the Masons. I've spoken about the Masons before. You know, my grandfather was involved in them, and he was himself a 33-degree Mason, and before he passed away, we used to have long telephone conversations between America and Australia, and the one thing that my grandfather always reinforced with me was to never have anything to do with the Masons because of what is done at the highest levels. And he said he has seen things that would terrify most people. So he wanted me to know that. And then I get this offer today from someone who used a Hebrew name, and they wanted to offer me money to join them, a large amount of money. And they, but you see, they're foot soldiers. I'm not going to deal with anyone that I think is on Facebook because it's mostly run by the CIA anyway. And we all know that the CIA, in order to be in part of their little group, you have to be a Mason. So this doesn't come as any surprise to me. And I will not do anything against my principles, and I am here on this third dimension at this time to serve the Creator of all. I'm not going to go to the dark side because I know some of those beings in the dark side. I've spoken to them on a regular basis, and I can tell you I don't want anything to do with it if they do half of the things that I've been told.
And I just want to say this because there's no question Victoria and I have been watched by the CIA and maybe even the FBI on occasion. The Masons are all tuned into all that, and they pretty much run the world. When you add in the Illuminati into the mix, you pretty much got 98% of the world covered. Of course, there are other organizations that most people don't know about that have been whispered to both Victoria and I, and a lot of the information that we hear is soon to be validated. And it's interesting how when these things come up, other people across the internet, all of a sudden these things come up too, especially a lot of the types that claim to be prophetic or that they are speaking directly to God or any of these other things. if you ever wanted to see something interesting, you should go to some of these prophecy pages. And actually, as we predict things, it's interesting how Victoria and I know that we're listened to by a lot of people, but we're not promoted, because the fact that we claim that we channel these beings, a lot of people have a problem with. And that's mostly because of the false religion they've been taught all their lives, and not to connect with spirits, when in actuality, if you had the whole story, like the story that exists on numerous tablets that are tens of thousands of years old, like the Sumerian tablets, they give you the whole story. They tell you that actually man was supposed to commune with spiritual beings for wisdom and intelligence, and they were supposed to be part of our everyday life, sort of the way Victoria and I live. However, we have to live in a cloistered way. We have to be out in the middle of nowhere, because the kind of messages that we receive, first of all, we don't want intervened with by being in an area where there's too much Wi-Fi and other things that can cause disruptions to what we need to do when it comes to channeling information. And the other reason, of course, is that we don't want to be anywhere in a city, because, I mean, we literally were threatened by the spiritual beings that we commune with, specifically because they wanted us out of the city. When we were living in Florida, there were different areas in Florida that we tried out. We ended up, like most people, living on the coast. And they absolutely had a fit and said, no, you have to go to the mountains. You have to be in the mountains. And it needs to be somewhere within Denver, Colorado. We'll tell you more.
And also, for me, living in Florida, I could never feel comfortable. And it was constant with me, you know. It was emotional ups and downs all the time, but I just didn't want to live on the coastline. And I kept saying, we need to go to the mountains, you know, because at this time, Mike really wasn't as much into the spiritual guidance as I was. And so it was really hard for him to take a leap of faith and basically listen to the voice inside of him, and from me saying that we need to go to the mountains. Now, this was years before we knew anything about Nibiru. And now that we know, and I'm seeing some of the craziest things on the Alaskan weather cams, like you would not believe. I am seeing planets with craters in them right near the sun, and I'm seeing sometimes 3 light reflections showing up in photographs, purple skies, bright orange skies, aqua blue. It's unbelievable what is going on, and yet nobody's talking about it. And it's right there in our faces, and I'm not taking those pictures. They come off the aviation cameras, and it's right there for everybody to see, but nobody cares to look. And this is part of the problem we're having. Why our world won't get better is because nobody wants to look.
Not only do they not want to look, they want to actually go in the opposite direction of where they should at least be facing. And what amazes me is, like, for example, Victoria and I constantly interact with people, even though we're pretty much hermits. It's kind of strange, but several weeks ago we met an individual that Victoria had been talking to online, and you know, she knows the right kind of people she can commune with and the wrong kind of people. And we've always maintained that we don't want anything from anybody except if they choose to give something to us, that is, we look at that as a gift, not as we insist that, you know, like some of these other types that run YouTube channels and stuff, they have all these, you know, Patreon and everything, which is really cool. You can help support people because YouTube is really screwing with people and their income that they were making. We all know about the censorship, which, by the way, should at some point is going to bite a lot of people in the backside, especially the tech giants. It's going to be a reason for the government to step in and take over a lot of these kinds of services, which is actually going to end up making things even more censored. But anyhow, I'm going off on a tangent here, and I apologize. But the main point, I guess, that we really need to understand as both people and people that want to be spiritual is that there is a certain amount of connectivity that you have to work at. And if you're not meditating, I'm to the point now where I meditate for almost a full hour every day. And I probably should do more, But that meditation time is powerful. It does something to you, and it changes you, especially if you really can grow silent and be quiet. And I'm practicing now tuning out other people, not to be rude, but to tune out that frequency noise so that I can hear the one song of creation that is supposed to be echoing, especially now through this planet. We're getting a lot of downloads. Those of you, if you think you have tinnitus and all these other issues, you probably don't. You're getting downloads to your DNA. You see, our DNA, the whole software concept, came from the fact of genetic manipulation, which then eventually led into the creation of supercomputers and other related things. The best supercomputers are actually going to have some organic components to them. Imagine that. Well, a lot of those organic components are things that can be made into spiritual constructs. You can create spiritual constructs for yourself and others that function like machinery or equipment. We've talked about that before, but I was told to bring this up in this conversation.
Well, if you're being told to bring it up in this conversation, then somebody's telling you to do it. So which one of you guys want to talk?
I can speak as a muck. A muckak is actually my name that has been given to me as one of the wardens. It's my job to commune with other beings who then also can speak to humans. There are many limitations because this is what is imposed upon them. And these limitations are a projection of other distant governments and the way they wish to see things governed. Long before the Word was created, there were beings of light that traveled the entire multiverse. They were the ones, the progenitors, who brought the mapping technology upon which many planets were revealed. Of course, you think these planets, they all just happened during a big explosion. Very funny. Well, when's the last time you, tossed a hand grenade in a room and everything exploded and formed into bookcases and pianos? And yes, we find that very humorous. You believe these things. But what I'm trying to tell you is this. It's absolutely important that you try to open your third eye. All of you hear all this talk about the third eye, but you can't connect unless you learn to open it. Just if you walked around with your eyes closed, you say, I can't see anything. Well, they tell you, open your eyes so you can see. Well, you can't do this. Not yet. You see, they spray your skies with metals and things that inhibit your ability to connect. But they want to pump their frequency around you so you'll stay imprisoned. Well, you need to know that there are others out there that are like you, that want to connect. And the technology is being used to divide humanity. Do you need this little box back?
No, you keep talking.
What else do you want me to tell you about? I don't know what else to say. Well, I was of a mind to speak about that, but you also mentioned the Adamites, and people had questions?
Yes.
What questions do they have?
Well, what do you know about them? Tell them what you know about the Adamites.
Well, a long time ago, there were great wars deep in the central portions of the galactic galaxies and empires. And while these wars had arisen, there were powerful but brutish beings that left these areas to seek out new places where they could infect their diseases upon all those that they governed. You see, everyone thinks that Creator God made everything. No, this is what is happening. He made many things, but he also created the multiverses, which are an extension of whom he is.
Yes.
They're part of his spiritual essence and part of his body, as you would predict or say or even think about. Well, when you travel the multiverse, there are many gateways and doors that can take you across distance, space, and time. And these are the secrets that many of those Adamites have possessed and used to travel, because they knew the gateways that they could delve into, and they could go to the past and the future, and they could go to different versions and different dimensions of planes. Well, they just so happened one of the worlds that they've settled on. And they come and arrive on these worlds asleep, as sleeping giants awaiting their time to be awakened. They're like locusts, in a sense, where they awaken and they consume for several thousand years, and then they fall into a deep slumber again. Usually it is precipitated by weather events on your planet, or other planets. Yes, they drive people, pretty much herding them into what few areas that remain. They will destroy millions and millions. The weather's going to continue to worsen. But of course, this is in part due to the things that are happening to your son.
Little story about the Adamites is something that was asked me, because a lot of people don't know who they are, and I've talked about them before. And some of like the Wizard of Oz, if you look at the wizard in the original movie, you'll see this green wizard, almost evil-looking wizard, with a elongated head with points in his head. And then if you look at the drawing that Aleister Crowley did in 1917, I think, or around there, 1905, somewhere around there, he drew a being that he called Lamb, and he had a big long head too. So you've got to try and understand that a lot of these beings are sending out messages. Kind of like, we see these movies of the ancient vampires, that even though they're sleeping, they can still speak to other beings around them, and they can still maneuver things even though they're in a somewhat sleep stage. And when they arise, they're usually hungry. Now, these sorts of things that are going on with the Adamites right now, all these earth changes, they're being woken up. Haven't you noticed that Antarctica is starting to melt? The temperature is increasing in Antarctica, and they're all saying they don't know why, but yet now they're saying they found an ancient city in Antarctica, and guess who's getting wakey time? Yes, that's right, girls and boys, it's the three Adamites.
Oh, that's very good, Victoria. They want to divide this world, and each of them will rule 1/3. It's all part of the claw thingy. The three-pointed claw, it's all connected. And once they realize that Marduk will be taking his seat soon, well, these things will begin to change, won't they? It's going to be a very interesting time for humanity. Will you sell yourself out, or will you await the time to come? That's the question I have to ask you.
Yeah, because whether people want to admit this or not, we are in the middle of a spiritual warfare, and these beings have been planning this event on this planet for quite some time. They also use prophecy to bring those events into fruition. Now, there are a lot of false prophets out there who are about to do their thing too. And I'm going to tell you, if you believe in your Bible, there's a scripture in Matthew that says, if he calls you to the desert, do not go. Well, somebody's about to have an event out there who's become quite popular on YouTube, and he's out in the desert, and he's promising all kinds of amazing things. But I'm going to tell you that you should not be deceived, and maybe just for once you should maybe listen to that scripture and not go out in the desert, because I don't really know that what's going to happen out there is going to be holy as he may be making out to the crowds. He is not what he claims.
Unfortunately, there will be many false prophets. I'm sure there's a select few people who listen to us that probably think we are false prophets to some degree. And but the fact of the matter that at least we're willing to discuss it and willing to tell people, look, this is our view of the world. These are the things that have happened to us. These are the things that we are doing, trying to educate people. And these are the things that people need to know. And as I told everyone else too, you don't even have to really believe any of this channeling, but should you at least listen to the information and go out and see if what we are saying is true. And if you taste of this information and you see that what we want to achieve is to help you survive and help you figure out what you're going to do, are you going to stay in the third dimension and keep, resurrecting and living out your life here because it's the only thing you know? Are you willing to listen to what we have to say and turn your back on religion and politics and anything that is divisive and try to find your place in the cosmos? And your place is a powerful place because we now know that all of us are incredibly powerful and eternal beings. It's just that as part of our imprisonment here on this prison planet, we have to keep reliving the amnesic dream dance that steals everything from us. It steals our humanity. It turns us into basically beings that have no other purpose but to get up in the morning, go and work a job to financially benefit everyone else and just a little bit yourself, and then come home, try and figure out how to pay all your bills and eat, and then maybe have an hour or two of entertainment to yourself, and then you go to bed and you repeat the whole pattern. Victoria and I hated that kind of life very, very much. And that is why we chose to move out in the middle of nowhere. And as I was originally telling the story before, sometimes, these beings kick in and they'll just say what they want, but we have met people that we know are dead serious about, events. They know that things are coming to coastlines, especially places like Florida. I mean, we're talking, 50, maybe 60 feet above sea level? Yeah, even a gentle tsunami at some point. And if you've seen any of the hurricane damage, Cat 3, Cat 4, and Victoria and I went through 4 or 5 of those, and that was one of the main reasons, other than we knew we had to get off the coast. This was like a taste test of what it was going to be like in a very small amount. And I'll tell you what, when you're sitting inside of a house and you hear the hurricane sucking away and you wonder if your roof is going to stay on this, and this is just a freaking Cat 3, can you imagine what people are going through nowadays with Cat 5s hitting? I mean, I have never seen the kind of weather phenomena that is taking place now. So if you need any sign that anything that we're saying has to have some degree of truth to it, just look at what the Earth has gone through, especially within the last 30 years. Anyone that's been alive longer than 40 years doesn't recognize our sky. We don't recognize our sun. We don't recognize the celestial movements as they used to be. And Victoria, who devotes literally several hours every day to some of these, government cameras that take pictures, the weather cams, all those kind of things. It is unbelievable the stuff that she is finding. I mean, we're talking body parts, eyes, gigantic spheres, striped planets, eclipses, all this stuff is going on, and nobody is paying attention to it. And it certainly is not commonplace because none of this took place when I was, 15, 16, 20. I never looked up and saw, the sky covered in chemtrails and, square clouds and things that look like spaceships that are being cloaked behind clouds. Weather machines, spinning objects, diamonds in the sky, UFOs of every kind, which are just exploding worldwide. All of these things are happening for a reason. And if you didn't believe that, you probably wouldn't be listening to this right now. But you know that stuff is going on. The question then becomes, what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to protect your family? Do you want to be like some of the people that we meet that, they know what's going to happen? It's probably even worse when we meet people because we get to talk to them, get to know them, and then, they wanted to meet us. And after they meet us, they're like, wow, these are really credible, nice people. And you know what? They're right. And we still get contacted by some of these people saying, man, I know I shouldn't be living, on the coast. And I know that there's some stuff that's going to be going down. But I just can't get out of my family situation. I don't have any money or whatever the situation is, I'm going to tell you one thing. That's up to you.
Yeah.
I mean, we can only tell you what we think is going to happen. Maybe we're wrong. I know we haven't been wrong in a long, long time. And I don't think we're wrong about all of the big stuff that's going on. But, I mean, what other advice can we give to people that if they're not willing to move away from the coastline, well, I appreciate the fact that you are willing to at least listen to us, but why would you want to know this information and still live on the coastline? I mean, because you know that at some point something horrific is going to happen. And that doesn't take a psychic or any person that channels to be able to even see that. Look at everything that's going on, all the reports, all the other things that we've seen about, earthquakes. I mean, do you watch Dutch Sense? In the last 2 years, earthquakes have gone off the charts. We've got volcanoes erupting all around the earth. We've got the Ring of Fire coming alive. We've got volcanoes in Italy, super volcanoes that are coming alive. We've got events that are taking place, floods in places that we have never seen before. In the middle of deserts, they're drowning in water. And then it's the opposite side. We've got one side of the coast, all of California, on fire, which, by the way, if you haven't heard, the paths that are being burned out, because this is kind of just a modern form of burning people out, happen to overlay perfectly for the new rail system that they want to put in California. Isn't that amazing how all of those fires just happen to equal the exact area that they needed to put that up? And oh yeah, of course, people are reporting everywhere seeing lights coming from the sky and then fires starting and houses burning down around forests that never even saw a burned branch. So you tell me, if this isn't enough for you to realize that your life is at risk and the life of your family is at risk, and you want to stay where you're at, I guess that's your choice. But the main message to all of you is, well, if you're going to do that, man, you better dig in. I hope you can figure out a way to survive, because there will come a day when the big one is going to hit. Everyone knows it. Everyone knows it. And if we have the big one go off in California or off the Gorda Escarpment, or if we have the middle of the country, which is supposed to have one of the worst earthquakes ever, will split America in half, supposedly. All of these things are well overdue. They're all documented. And now we're getting more information that troops are being moved around and deployed to different areas, and that FEMA's on high alert, and all these other things are going on, and people don't think that something incredibly big is about to happen. I'm telling you, we know because we hear all these beings have been telling us, but you don't even need to know that. Just look at what's going on around. Man, you got to get out of Dodge. You got to get out of the cities. You need to find some way, a place that you can live where you can eventually farm and have chickens and ducks and pigs and maybe horses, because you may need horses to get around. The EMP is all part of this plan, people. So, my goodness, take your pick. Even if you just wanted to stock up for bad weather, it would be a good idea, right? How's your stockpile coming? That was the other question I was told to ask people. How's your stockpile coming? Victoria and I work on our stockpile. We have a lot of things here. We still aren't happy with what we have, and we've been doing this for a while. So then the question is, have you done anything at all? Do you at least have 30 days of food and water that you can count on for everybody in your home? Do you know how long it's going to take for them to restore power? It can take up to a year. So anyhow, those are all the warning flags and the things that I've been told to talk about. Now, as far as the other things, yeah, I mean, this is all coming to fruition.
Well, Stephen, I thought you wanted to say something.
And what would you like me to say?
Well, I mean,
you had a point. My point was, listen, all of this is great, getting prepped and off the coast and stuff. But let me tell you, well, some of the things they got planned here that's coming, you really, really need to find someplace out in the middle of nowhere. And I'm telling you, all of you that have those cell phones, yeah, it was hard for us to get the Kellys to give up theirs. But I'm telling you, you don't want to have a cell phone. You really don't. And if you don't have a choice, and you have to have one, you should get something to put it in so that it protects you from the energy that comes out of this thing, and never put it next to your head. And you should use a device, what do they call it, a Bluetooth?
Yeah, it's like a little radio transmitter. Yeah, you could put that in your ear. It won't fry your brain. And then put your phone somewhere, maybe on your roof of your car. Holy cow, these things are dangerous. And they're making them more and more dangerous so that people, but they're so addicted to all the things they can do, these phones, right? But the thing is, they use that phone. They're going to use it to control you. They're going to use it to send very negative energy through it all the time. And they'll be able to control entire swaths of society. Okay, let's see. Everyone in New York today is going to have a headache. And then tomorrow, some of you are going to be sick. Some of you are going to commit suicide. I mean, these are the kind of things they're planning to do with these phones. So I'm telling you, the first thing you should do is, look, if you need to have a phone because you're out in the middle of nowhere or something, fine. But get, what do you call those things? You close it. A block it pocket. Yeah, that's what it is. You can look that up, and you close it, and the phone is completely ray shielded. So if you keep it in your pocket, it won't microwave your freaking hip bones or the back part of your pelvis. My goodness. Have you seen what these phones can do? And wait till they get to 5G. But pretty much everyone's going to be having brains leaking out of their ears.
So that was yours. That was your big comment, Stephen. And what about you, Charles? Did you have something you wanted to say?
No, but you should probably listen to... I would listen to Stephen at least part of the time when he's not being a jackass, which is most of the time. Hey, I'm not trying to pick on Stephen, really. But I just think that he made a good point. Maybe you should be a little bit less friendly with your phone and more friendly with what the hell's going on in the world. And people just, it's amazing. This is what they call normalcy bias, is when you want so bad for things to be normal that you'll do crazy things and behave like it's normal when it obviously isn't. And I heard Michael use this representation of this, is the people in Cuba were waiting in line to fly planes out of Cuba before the hurricane hit, but there was no power and no planes and no people in that airport, right? But they were standing in line, some of them for 2 or 3 days, thinking if they stood in line, then somehow planes would magically appear and employees would magically appear, and the power was even off too. But yet they were waiting in line. That's normalcy bias like you've never seen before.
That was in Maria. That was in Puerto Rico, in Maria, when they went to the airport.
Oh, it was Puerto Rico.
Yeah, it was Puerto Rico when they were the big storm came.
I thought it was Cuba. Okay, that's fine.
Okay. They were just standing there waiting for the counters to come online and the people just to magically put their little uniforms on and go behind the counters and start booking. But what they forgot was they just had a hurricane and there was no electric, and there was no planes coming in, there was no planes going out, and
there were no employees in the building, and yet they still wait in line.
And that's what we're saying. This is what's going on, people, is that we have such normalcy bias that even when there is a catastrophic event now, we just poo-hoo it off like it's no big deal. And we're just like, we'll go along. Because it hasn't really set into America yet. We've had a couple of hurricanes and we've had some big fires this year. But we really have not started to go through it like some other people are going through it. In India, for instance, they have landslides, they have hurricanes, they have earthquakes going on, and now their roads are just splitting open as the ground shifts and shakes. And the government of India have said that it's from too many cars being on the road. Yeah, that's our governments for you. That's how they help their people. They lie to them. So at this point, we are so close to what is about to occur. Some of you need to be paying attention if you're on the West Coast and all the way out, right up to the Alaskan area, for the Cascadia zone, which is something that they're very concerned about. And you need to pay attention to that, because now that they're burning people out of the state of California so they can put in their rail line, the next thing is what? Because guess what? Steamboat Geyser went off for the 28th time this year. Think about that, guys. Steamboat Geyser goes off maybe once a year, and it's going off frequently, like once a week lately. And it went off yesterday again for the 28th time. So something big is happening, and it's moving underneath us. And maybe you need to be more aware of your surroundings, because You need to look up. There's things happening up in the sky. You need to start understanding that what you thought was real is an illusion. And I'm going to tell you, if you can't get to the high places soon, because I don't want to tell you how much time we have. I don't really know. I just know it's urgent. I'll give you an idea of how urgent it was. I woke up the other night from a dream, and I was so dead sure that we had had a blackout. And in the dream, it was as if I wasn't even here. I was in somewhere else. And there was somebody telling me that the electric was going out. Well, the whole area went out. So I'm going to say it was like an EMP. And there were people scrambling everywhere. I woke up and I said to my husband, did the electricity come back on yet? And he's like, what are you talking about? And I said, the electric went off, right? And he's like, no, Vic, the electric didn't. But the dream was so real that I could see people's faces, I could see surroundings. And this is actually very, very recent, that I would say maybe in a few weeks, a month, I don't know. But it's going to happen, guys. And I was actually helping some guy with, there were little babies in this thing, and I was helping him. Something is going on, and I haven't been able to sleep properly for the last few nights, and I'm very restless. So pay attention to what's going on, please. We're in crunch time. And with that, Mike, did you want to say anything else?
I know sometimes we go off on tangents, but I really wanted to emphasize to everybody that it's just so important. Food, water, I mean, money is going to be meaningless. Currency will be meaningless. If any of you listen to John, ex-Army, interesting fellow, used to have a lot of interesting videos he used to watch, and then all of a sudden, he ran into a group of historians that began to educate him in events that are taking place. And he just lost his mind over the last couple of weeks. He's out there preparing food for his family, buying, extra things that they're going to need, filling up large blue containers of water. Can't say it enough that when you can afford it, and hopefully soon, that you try to continue to stockpile food, because when they crash the system, and every economist, again, here's another doomsday scenario for you, have predicted that at some point our currency, which by the way is almost valueless right now, which happens to currency every time they reset it, that's how they reset the economy. They got to have a crash and then reinstate a new currency. Well, this is part of the way that we think they're going to bring in the new world currency. Because we know the American dollar, for years, places like China, they've all been cashing their poker chips and getting out of currency and forming other unions of other countries that are going to create their own reserve currency, so they no longer need America as a reserve currency. When that happens, we are done. You will not be able to use money to buy anything unless it's something like gold or silver or something you can exchange, like a can of Spam, can of SpaghettiOs. That stuff's going to have more value than a $10,000 bill pretty soon. So stockpile as much of it as you can, because even if you don't need it, you can always trade it for other things. Or what do you lose if you stockpile food and water? Okay, you get to eat if there's an emergency, which is really important. And the federal government has also come out with new guidelines for FEMA saying that people should have a minimum of 2 weeks of food and water on hand at all times. So even the government is trying to tell people this, but we know it's going to be more like 6 to 8 months, and that's going to be a minimum too, so that you don't have to go out and kill other people for food. And of course, you're going to need a way to defend it and a way to protect it, and you should also break it up into different stockpiles and hide part of it in one place, part of it in another. That way you don't have all your eggs in one basket kind of deal. And you should be thinking about a final bug out location. Those are just basic survival facts, and you can cut them any other way you want. But I hope this information has been helpful. Like I said, sometimes Victoria and I go off a bit on tangents, but we have decided that what little information we can impart to people, again,